Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk2864. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we've got Punk2864 with some of my most favorite traits in the punk collection. He's a 3 Atty with a mustache, eye mask, and knitted cap. He's an avid NFT art collector. Please welcome ThomasCrown.eth. Thomas, how are you? Good morning, GM.
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us bright and early. Hopefully you've got a coffee in you so we can get cracking on with the show.
Yeah, one or two coffees in me already and 3 or 4 to come.
Excellent. So Thomas, maybe if you could just kick us off just with a brief introduction to yourself and your background and how you got into NFTs.
Sure. So I come from a corporate sales background, and I led their international sales and business development. And I was in that position for about a dozen years. And to be honest, I was just starting to burn out, ready for a very different kind of a challenge and an adventure. And so I left that position at the start of 2021 and moved to the Caribbean, where I have built myself a house. I have a friend that refers to it as a Caribbean compound, and that might be a better description. And so I've spent the last year and a half kind of making that move and building a life for myself down here. As far as how I originally fell into the crypto rabbit hole, I read an article about the DAO hack back in I guess late 2016. I saw this article, and so by 2017, I had done quite a bit of research into Ethereum. I actually come to crypto Ethereum first. I know many people kind of find this space through Bitcoin, but Ethereum just made sense to me, and I could see the opportunity there, and so really just started exploring all the different facets of this space, and that, of course, in time included NFTs.
That's awesome. And just out of curiosity as well, I mean, it must have been a big move and decision for you, a life decision to pack your bags and move to the Caribbean. What sort of drove that decision?
Well, I've always had an interest in different cultures, different ways of doing things. I've moved around my whole life and really wanted to be on the water. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy the beach. I enjoy boating and fishing and swimming and all of these things. And so this was a plan that actually predates my involvement in crypto, although crypto perhaps allowed me to accelerate this plan a little bit. So yeah, down here with my 3 dogs, enjoying life now.
And so talk to me a little bit more about going down the Ethereum rabbit hole. What was it that sort of drew you into Ethereum most?
I think it was the permissionless aspect, to be honest. I really I have kind of an anti-authoritarian counterculture kind of lean to me. And so the idea that we didn't need to go to big banks or big social media companies and have their permission to access our money or our information, and the ability for anyone to be included in this, the inclusiveness that blockchain and Ethereum specifically brings, I think is really fascinating to me, and something that I saw a lot of value in. And so I don't have really a fintech background in any way, but it just seemed like this is something that should be valuable to other people as well, and I knew I wanted to be involved.
And so that was in 27, so you would have picked up some pretty cheap ETH then, right?
Yeah, not enough, never enough, right? But but yeah, that's where it started.
Nice. And I can see on your handle you've got the ENS domain .eth, ThomasCrown.eth, and I also see that you have the BAT and the sound signal, so which indicates to me that you must be either a bankless listener or just an absolute ETH maxi, meaning for ultrasound money.
Maxi's become such a dirty word. I would say I'm probably a decentralization maxi. I really value and prioritize the attributes that make Ethereum special. And by that, again, I mean the ability for anyone to participate, anyone to spin up a node, anyone to be able to stake their ether. And so I think I'm open to any other blockchain that would offer these same attributes. I'm not anti-Bitcoin, certainly. But yes, my focus has been predominantly Ethereum. I am a voracious podcast listener. I listen. I've been listening to Bankless since their very first episode. I've been a big fan of Into the Ether prior to that. I'm not sure if I think they still do updates now and then, but not as active as they once were. So yeah, I think, I say when people ask me about my experience with Ethereum, I tell them that every minute that I've spent exploring this space has been rewarded, whether that's through being exposed to different opportunities or something as simple as airdrops, just for kind of playing around. It pays to be in crypto, and I might have just stolen that from Bankless, actually.
No, absolutely. So it feels like it's, crypto rewards those that contribute to it the most. And just out of curiosity, what drove the name ThomasCrown.eth? Like, how did you come up with that name, and why did that sort of resonate with you? Because it's based on the movie, right?
Right. And so this comes back to my punk, actually. It's interesting. I was listening to your episode with Joshua D., and hearing him describe his collection of punks with police hats and orange knit beanies as a collection of cops and robbers, and that kind of being his initial impression of them. And so it was the same for me. When I saw this punk, which, as you mentioned, has the orange beanie, but also kind of a mustache and an eye mask as well, my first thought was he looks like a thief. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting in the NFT art space where, everything's a steal. Anything you get at a good price is a steal. There's a lot of rugging and all of this. And I thought, well, who is perhaps the most well-known art thief, at least in pop culture, that I could think of? and that was Thomas Crown. So I went and registered this ThomasCrown.eth, and there's a few other connections I have there, but I kind of decided that I would just create this character. And so, created a Twitter account for him, and got this ENS name, and been having a lot of fun with that ever since.
No, he's amazing, and it's a very fitting name for your punk for sure. And just out of curiosity as well, like, why have you decided or chosen?
Why not, I guess, would be the answer to that question. It's not something that I am completely committed to. I think if the right opportunity came along, I'd have no problem tying this account to my real life identity, and I certainly treat my interactions with others that way, as if one day we'll be meeting on a in real life basis. But I saw no advantage, and still see no advantage at the moment, to kind of having my real identity out there. Now, where I live at the edge of the world here, I don't have to worry too much about wrench attacks or anything like that. Good luck finding a wrench here, let alone me. So it's not, it's partially security based, but partially I just haven't had incentive to dox myself at this point.
No, it makes sense. I asked that question because I'm anonymous as well, but it just allows me some freedoms just to speak my mind and without being bound down by my true identity. So I thought maybe there was something a little bit more with you as well, but it makes sense. And so perhaps you can talk us through, I guess, your first NFT and then I guess your first purchasing journey. What was that like?
I would say that the NFT that I really kind of first got into was probably MLB Champions back in 2018. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that project at all. Not too many are these days. I think they're still iterating, but somewhere along the way they've lost me. But anyway, it's an officially licensed Major League Baseball NFT, and there's some gameplay there where you are able to purchase players. You set a lineup based on their performance. There is some ranking, and so it's a game in that way. And I think that really opened my eyes to how NFTs could benefit gaming. As in-game assets. At that time, I also purchased an NFT. Maybe you're familiar with Evan Van Ness, who started a weekly newsletter. I think it's called Week in Ethereum News, or maybe that's the new name. But anyway, right around that time, maybe a little bit even earlier than 2018, he had issued an NFT that provided access to special content within that newsletter. And so that really showed me how NFTs could be used as membership gating. You hold this NFT, and so you have access to content, events, whatever it may be. And so I really started to get a view of the power of NFTs. They hadn't yet exploded onto the scene like they would a few years later. There wasn't really an NFT space as it exists today. And so I wasn't looking at these things in the same light at that point. It was really just a new tool to play around with. And then of course I had some, I was registering ENS names back then, but again, not really. You look back at all the meat you've left on the bone over the years. And again, I was just registering ridiculous ENS names instead of 3-digit numbers like I should have been.
Nice, super fascinating. I think 2018 was super early for NFTs, right? To dabble and experiment with NFTs back then. How did you sort of find your way into it? I mean, was it just out of curiosity and sort of a solo mission, or did you have a group of friends that were hanging out, or did you find some communities online to find your way into these NFTs?
No, I would say it was probably a solo mission, despite my best efforts to rope my friends into it. I'm excited, and we're at dinners, and I'm telling everyone about this new toy that I have found that has just captured my attention. And it took a long time for anyone to kind of share my appreciation for all things blockchain. And it was just kind of through exploration that I stumbled across these NFTs. As you say, it was fairly early, and nothing would happen for quite a while after that before crypto. I guess CryptoKitties was probably the next thing that showed up on my radar, and it developed much slower than it feels looking back at it now. Today it feels like this whole thing happened overnight. But if I actually take a minute and think about the series of events that led to this point, it really is, you can kind of see a slower build, the culmination of several years to get where the space is today.
And then, so talk to me about, from that sort of journey then, how did you find your way into CryptoPunks? Like, how did you get an interest in it, and how did you sort of go about, leading up to your first punk purchase?
I mean, I think the fact that we're on this call right now means that you and I are both still fairly early to the NFT space. But in another sense, I'll tell you the truth, I am late to everything. And I probably should have taken notice of CryptoPunks long before I did. I was aware of them, but didn't really understand what a unique and lasting position they would take in the market. And so it wasn't until March, April, the blockchain will tell you, but give or take a month, that I purchased my, that would be April 2021, excuse me, that I purchased this punk. And I think the price at the time was something like 14 Ether, so it wasn't cheap. But I understood by that point what punks would become for the NFT space. And like I say, I saw this punk, and I kind of just, the whole thing came to me as far as kind of taking on this persona of ThomasCrown and making this punk be the face of that character.
So talk me through the selection process then. Were you browsing for a while, or were you specifically intent on looking something that looked like a thief or a robber?
No, I wasn't looking for a thief. I was looking for a punk that had a certain aesthetic appeal. I say that my punk is floor adjacent. In that it's been a while since I looked at what the rarity is, but it's right around the middle of the pack there. And so I was, 14 ETH at that time in like I say, April 2021 was not an insignificant amount of money. And maybe if I had even more conviction, I would have invested in punks with perhaps rarer traits. But at the time, I was just looking to kind of join the community in any way I could. And so, yeah, I watched the collection and what was for sale for a while before making my decision. But when I saw this guy, I knew he was the one.
Amazing. And so you spoke about, at that point in time, this is in, April, May last year in 2021, that you understood what CryptoPunks were. like in your words, what do CryptoPunks mean to you at that point in time or even now?
Well, they mean the same thing to me now as they did at that point in time. And look, I'll first just say I don't think that anybody knows what happens next in this space. That's kind of my starting place, whether we're talking about an L1 or an NFT project or the DeFi space. I think it could go any way of a million different ways. And so I'll just kind of, my best guess is that NFTs are going to come back in a big way, but that they will not reflect the last bull market that we've just gone through. I don't think moving forward NFTs are going to be specifically art driven. I think that we're going to start to see a lot more use cases emerge, and it'll be the kind of thing that way down the road here, it'll be a little bit of trivia. Did you know NFTs started as JPEGs, PFPs, CryptoPunks? Because at that point, everyone's understanding of NFTs will be so much broader than what they are today. And so I'm a strong believer that there's a future for NFTs. I think that they will become quite pervasive in everyday life, in identity, in ownership, in access. And I think that there's going to be very few projects that come to mind when people think back to how NFTs started. And I think at the top of that list is going to be CryptoPunks.
Amazing. I tend to agree. So not putting words in your mouth, but if I was to summarize, a bet on CryptoPunks is basically a bet on the future of NFTs, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the case.
So then, what are you collecting these days? Like, what are you sort of interested in? I see some really interesting things in your vault, some nice pieces of art, and I sort of recognize a few of them from Nifty Gateway. Do you want to just talk us through some of your collection and what you like collecting?
Yeah, so I cover a lot of ground. I've been involved with various PFP projects. I collect from a lot of different artists. There are some things, some projects in the NFT space which don't necessarily fall into either of those camps. Something like Schlam's exploding Lamborghini would be maybe an example of that. And so I've got a pretty wide-ranging collection still today, but probably a bit more narrow than it was at the peak. At some point along the way, I realized that I really, when I collect from an artist or I join a PFP community, I really like to kind of get into the Discord and chat with the community and see what that community is all about. And there's only so many communities that you can actively participate in at any one time. And so I started to realize that I had stretched myself a bit thin in that regard. And I think I'm not the only one in this space that over the last months or so here has been going through something of a consolidation where I've really had to kind of look at my collection and say, okay, what here is really going to be lasting? Obviously, CryptoPunks made the cut there, a few other projects, and really I had to ask myself, what artists are you really kind of passionate about their work, and really kind of want to follow along with their developments? And so there's a handful of artists there, and everything else has probably been sold off or it's hanging in the gallery, and I still very much enjoy looking at it, but I'm less active now in many of those communities. So really it's just been a process of kind of focusing my attention and energy where I feel, where I get the most enjoyment and where I think there's probably the most value.
Awesome. And you mentioned you like going into communities and hanging out in Discords. Like, which kind of communities do you frequent the most and find value in?
Yeah, oddly enough, I'm probably, of all the kind of Discords that I do participate in, maybe Cryptopunks is at the lower end of that spectrum. I've really been quite active in the Discord of some artists. I don't know if you are familiar with the artist Vils, but I'm a moderator, in fact, in Vils Discord. And really, I think that's one of the nicest communities around. And I'm absolutely blown away by the work that Vils puts out. I think it's amazing how he has married the traditional art background, the street art background that he comes from, with the unique opportunities that NFTs provide. I follow the work of Chris Heitha very closely. He is the creator of the Rohomes project and is currently working on a project called High Rises in the same vein. And so those might be the two artists that I'm most involved with. I do think that the NFT market is in a place now where everything is so depressed that we are either at a bottom or quickly approaching it. And for those projects which will make it out of this bear market, I think we're seeing some real opportunities. And look, I can't tell you exactly which projects those will be, but one that I'm involved in to kind of, I guess, shill my bags, although I really don't have plans to sell any of the things that I've mentioned here. But I've kind of looked at the energy around PAC and the Merge project, which was the largest NFT sale when it happened, and brought in all of these first-time NFT buyers. Something near 30,000 unique wallets to start. And so that's just, you're kind of starting with a very large community there. And obviously PAC's a very well-known artist, but in recent weeks, in the last few months maybe, there's kind of been this feeling that Merge is dead, PAC is dead. And so it felt like blood in the streets to me. And so I've become involved in the Merge community. I picked up one of the Blue Merge, and I've had some fun merging other mass into that. And I think we're down to something like 21,000 unique mass at this point. So almost a third in the first. We're probably at 10 months here since the project launched. So almost a third of them are gone. And now you're down to about 20,000 mass. And I see that in the coming year, perhaps falling to 10,000. And then you're at the size of a PFP. And so this idea of a community that started so large becoming more and more exclusive is really, I think, a novel mechanism. And I think PACs continue to just innovate in this space. And so it was, I'm interested to see where it goes. I'll say that.
Thomas, I'm familiar with the Pack Merge Mass project. Just for those that are listening, could you just summarize, I guess, the project and the mechanics? Because it's a really interesting project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take a step back here and say that the thing that interests me the most about Pack is the mechanisms. For me, it's not really very much about the art or the image itself at all. It can't be, because the merge or each mass is just essentially a dot on a background. Most of them a white dot on a black background. There are a few, of course, yellow, blue, and reds, which are much more scarce, mixed in there as well. But Pack really, I'm sure your listeners will fact check me on this, but my understanding is that Pack invented the open edition with Nifty Gateway. And so the merge was kind of an evolution of Pack's mechanisms. And so what you were able to purchase is mass of a certain size, depending on the investment that you wanted to make at the launch. But you could purchase a mass the size of 1 or the mass the size of 1,000, and the dot would be of corresponding size, your NFT. You would have a much bigger white dot if you had purchased 1,000. And so what you can do is hold exactly one mass in any given wallet. And the moment you introduce a second mass to that wallet, they merge, and you have a new mass, which is the combined size of both masses. And so there's some interesting gameplay here in terms of the larger mass consuming the smaller mass. I'll say specifically that I own one of the blue mass. And so Pack had randomly assigned, out of these 30,000, Pack had randomly assigned 50 of these mass to be a white dot on a blue background. And since that time, the blues have gone about essentially this civil war, this infighting, where they will, in fact, one blue will, they call it murder another blue. And they do this by sending a non-blue mass, just one of the white dots on the black background, of a larger size to one of the holders of a blue mass. And what that does is the larger mass then consumes the blue mass. That person no longer has a blue mass. That blue mass no longer exists. And so today we're down to about 24 of these blue mass. And so that's just an example of the kind of gameplay that a mechanism like this brings about. Pack then has these games, or seasons as they're called, where if you're merging different mass within a certain time period, you're rewarded. And in this case, it was the drop of what Pack refers to as matter. And so there's a lot of games that can be played within this ecosystem, rewards to be had. It's a lot of fun. And because it started with such a large community, there's still a lot of activity around that.
Absolutely. He's definitely a mysterious and talented artist. And I say that from speaking with another punk, and I won't reveal his name for now because I think he's got a really great story to tell. But he was explaining to me, I guess with his experience, he came from a traditional art gallery sort of world, running his own gallery, that when it comes to sort of NFT as a new, I guess, platform for artistic expression, a lot of artists, they're not leveraging all elements of it. And he was saying that, there's sort of three key elements that form part of that canvas. And the first element is the visual layer, which everybody can relate to. The second layer is the smart contract layer, where you can tweak and adjust things based on, the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum. And in this case with PAC, it's the merging mechanisms that's all built into the smart contract. And the third one is really around the tokenomic layer, which is around the demand and supply elements of the collection. And I think when a lot of artists come into the space, they don't necessarily look at all three key elements to express, I guess, their narrative as an artist. And I think PAC is one of the very rare few artists in the space that leverages all three very, very well. And in some ways, not necessarily looking at the visual layer, but all three combined is a work of art in itself, right? He's a bit of a mastermind when it comes to these kind of drops.
Absolutely. And I think that's great advice for any artist just entering the space, that there is more than a surface layer here to consider. And it can be daunting. I don't come from a technical background at all. And I would guess there are artists that are in that same position. And so it can be overwhelming to try and tackle something like that smart contract layer. But that's where, again, I think that PAC is quite a visionary in terms of something like the Open Edition, which now has been adopted by virtually every drop that Nifty Gateway does, but other platforms as well. And I think that once an artist has kind of unlocked that functionality, it opens up a whole new world of opportunities for someone to take it a step further. And this kind of comes back to what we were saying about just having scratched the surface here in the NFT space, and what it looks like in 10 years would probably be unrecognizable to us today.
Absolutely. So that's a fun chat about PAC. I might give his project another look. It got a little bit too complex for me, if I'm honest. So I kind of tapped out, but that was a really good explanation. And so, Thomas, looking back on your, I guess, NFT career to date, do you have any sort of, wins or losses that come to mind that's, worth sharing, that's memorable?
Sure. The losses come to mind just about every day. I mentioned leaving leaving meat on the bone. I don't know anyone that's been in this space for any amount of time that's not true for. I sold Bored Apes at 6 ETH, something like that. I sold a Fidenza at 25 ETH, something like that. Would I have loved to hold on a bit longer and sell the top? Absolutely. But I'll go back to the episode that you did with Josh. I think his parting advice was to take profits, and I think that's good advice. I think it's very easy to get carried away in this space, and so when you're sitting there and you're up 10x, 25x, whatever it is, it might be time to consider taking a few chips off the table. So yeah, I would say, it's hard to say that I regret those things, because, to be honest, if I didn't sell a Bored Ape at 6 ETH, I would have sold it at 10. And if I didn't sell it at 10, I would have sold it at 15. And so those were probably the losses that stick with me the most. As far as wins go, some things I didn't sell too early. Some things I did catch somewhere near the top, and probably, well, I'll give you two examples. You mentioned PAC's projects becoming very complicated, and I think there's some truth to that. We have to remember that not everyone in this space has hours every day to devote to kind of understanding all of these projects and all of their nuances. And for me, the project that became convoluted to the point where I said, okay, I got to get out of this. Because, not saying it doesn't have value, but just because I don't understand it anymore, was Punk's comic. And you know, I was following Beanie at the time and kind of heard about this Punk's comic and really just, you know, interested in anything Punk's related. So jumped into that with both feet. But about the time that they were selling for, you know, 15 to 20 ETH a piece, they were introducing heroes and planets, and I you know, I'm not the right person to speak about that project, but it was too much, and so I let them go. And I don't think you'd find a buyer at those prices today. The other thing I'll just mention quickly, because this is a podcast for punks, is just owning a punk has been a profitable decision for me. Just by owning a punk, I've been airdropped things. You're probably familiar with Nifty Island, a very well-known kind of metaverse play in the space. They dropped these palms to punk holders. I believe you had to be in their Discord, perhaps at a certain time. But they dropped these palms of different varieties, and I think I sold my palm around $50,000, which would already more than recover the cost of my punk. That community, I think, has dropped probably another $20,000 worth of NFTs. And so, you know, that alone, that's just kind of an example. And again, I don't say, because I've sold something doesn't mean I don't believe the project has a future. It's just, you know, outside of my bandwidth. And you know, kind of realizing maybe where we're at in any given market cycle. But it's not a reflection in any way in you know, my feeling of that project's prospects for the future. But anyway, just kind of having a punk, I think, has opened doors for me, which would not have otherwise been open.
Attention is a very scarce commodity, right? So I think I'm like you, unless like it's easy for me to understand, I'll probably exit too, even if it is a good project and it might have some legs afterwards. But you know, trying to stay in touch with everything, it gets a little bit complex as you grow your collection, for sure. And so, Thomas, just a side question then. So when you look across the Twitter space, do you have a favorite punk personality that you like, you know, observing and learning from?
I certainly have some favorite personalities which have punks and use their punks as PFPs very often, although perhaps they're, I consider them more broadly Ethereum personalities than kind of NFT specific or punk specific. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned being a big fan of the Into the Ether podcast, especially in the early going of my journey. That podcast did a lot for my own education. And Eric Connor, who was one of the founders there, is a punk, has a punk as his PFP currently. I think it's an albino with 3D glasses and not sure exactly what the trait's called, but some kind of frumpy hair. But anyway, I found Eric to be a rational voice. I think if anything, his contributions to this space have been underappreciated. Again, someone fact check me, but I believe he may have been an author of the EIP for 1559, certainly an early and strong proponent of it, and helped to get that pushed through. And again, just kind of the amount of time that he has devoted to education in this space. And certainly you could say the same thing for Sassel, the co-founder there of Into the Ether. But I resonate with some of the more mature, rational OG voices in the space. I think they really help to keep us grounded, especially in the heat of a bull market when things are getting carried away.
Amazing. It must have been before my time, so definitely I'll take a look at Into the Ether and Eric a little bit closer. That's cool. And so if you were to describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe it?
I would probably use words like vintage, durable, classic, things like this. I really, like I say, I think that this is going to be one of the very few hallmark projects of the early NFT space. And I think that as time passes, the mystique around CryptoPunks will only grow. And I kind of view CryptoPunks as having this role of kind of keeping that history, of having been here for the most part. Many of us were here early. Not many of us are, have purchased punks here in the last. Maybe in the last few weeks they've become attractive again, but certainly during the peak of the bull market, when I think the floor was like 140 ETH, something like that. Something like 400,000 US. I think that those punks that have been here for a while will serve a purpose in 5-10 years, because they'll remember the space as it was and how we began and our humble start as just JPEGs on a blockchain.
Amazing. And if you could pass a message on to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
Well, as I say, I don't have any intention of selling. When people DM me and say, is your punk, are you willing to sell your punk? I say, well, everything's for sale, but are you willing to overpay? Because it would, when I value my punk, I start with the traits, but I add, a premium for how handsome he is and how attached I've grown to him. So to the future owner of this punk, I'd say, please return my stolen property, because I probably haven't sold it.
Excellent. And so Thomas, any, closing comments on your side before we sort of close out?
I'll just say that, I think what you're doing here, kind of creating a record of how punks began, their early owners and their stories, is really, I think, adds a lot of value to being a punk holder, to being a collector in this space, and can't wait to hear future episodes, Max. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, and appreciate the sentiments and the comments there, Thomas. Much appreciated. And I guess if people want to find you, what's the best way? Is it just through Twitter or other means?
Yeah, Twitter's probably your best bet. There's not many Thomas Crowns, but I'm at, you can say E Thomas Crown or ETH Thomas Crown, whatever your preference.
Awesome. I'll stick it in the show notes anyway. But awesome. This was super fun, Thomas, and maybe I'll try and find my way out to the Caribbean and find you on the beach somewhere one day. But definitely, if you're ever in Hong Kong, definitely hit me up.
Will do, and likewise, let me know. I got a guest house waiting for you.
Excellent. And guys, that's a wrap for another episode of PunkCast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back again with another punk next week. Bye now.